Yo, what is up guys, and welcome back to another AMV tutorial. Today we're going to be doing an effect which you might have seen in quite a lot of different edits, and that is the 3D shape transition. So as always, if you get stuck at any point during the video, don't hesitate to leave a comment down below, and let's get started. So starting right from scratch in an empty composition, first we're going to make our shape layer, and you can use any shape for this effect. I've seen people use rectangles, I've seen people use stars, but I'm going to go with the ellipse tool because I think a circle looks the best. So hold shift while dragging. This will allow you to create a uniform circle and not an oval. And don't worry about it not being perfectly centered because we're going to go into transform, center anchor point in layer content, transform once again, and center in view. Now we have a perfect circle that is right in the middle of our screen. So now that we have our shape layer, let's set up a camera. So go to new, camera, don't really worry about these settings. And as always, we're going to create a couple of null objects to place the keyframes on. And the reason for not placing them on the base camera layer is that you'll be able to make any minor adjustments you want to without adding any unwanted keyframes. So I'm going to create two nulls for a bit of flexibility in the transition, and we're going to link them to the camera. Next, let's enable 3D properties on all of the layers we have created, and to set up the actual tunnel, what we're going to do is we're going to keep duplicating the shape layer, each time increasing the Z position by a constant amount, and this way the rings will get progressively further away from us. So let me show you what that looks like. So we're going to take this layer, we're going to duplicate it, reveal the position. The Z position is this third value here. It always goes X, Y, Z. So I'm going to make this 1000. And I'm going to duplicate it again. And I'm going to increase it by 1000 each time. So this one would be 2000. And I'm just going to keep doing this. So before we do anything else, let's just increase the Z position of the camera a little bit because I think it starts out a little bit too far away from the rings. So after you've done that, let's apply some effects to the shape layers because right now they're just solid white and they don't look very nice. So there's many different ways you can do this. I'm going to be using texture flux, and I want my rings to have a bit of a reddish tint. So that's the color I'm going to use, but obviously you can use any color. Next, let's apply some deep glow and make sure to unmult. And lastly, we're going to use some shine. And what this effect does is it's going to cause some little light rays to extrude out from the edge of the layer, and it looks pretty good. And I'm just going to tweak these settings a bit to make it look better. You can copy them if you want. So now that our effects are done, we can go ahead and apply them to every single shape layer. So now let's actually keyframe some camera movement, and this is pretty simple. Go to the position transform on the first null and separate the dimensions. This way we only keyframe the Z position and not the other two. Becomes a lot less confusing. And Z position keyframe at the start by clicking on the stopwatch. Go to the end of the layer and increase the Z position to whatever the Z value of your last shape layer is. So for me, that's 6000. You can just directly copy paste. And you can move this keyframe to the end. Now in terms of graphing, you're going to want to highlight Easy Ease, Graph Editor, and I want my camera to be moving quickly at the start, slow down a bit in the middle, and move quickly at the end. So that means we want a steep gradient at the start and a steep gradient at the end. So the camera's going to move quickly, it's going to slow down a bit, and then it's going to speed up again. And we can preview it. So once you're happy with your camera movement, we can move on to the particles, and for this you'll want an adjustment layer. This can also be a solid. Position it beneath the shape layers, and I'm going to be using CC Particle World, but you can always use something like Particular. And firstly, let's disable these grids because they are very obtrusive. I'm also going to turn down the birth rate and the longevity. Next, let's enter the producer and increase the radius of the producer so that the particles span the whole screen. I usually find 1, 1, and 5 to be about right. In terms of physics, if you don't want the particles to have drop off, you can set the gravity to 0, which is what I usually do. If you want longer particles, you can also increase the velocity. And finally, I'm going to make the color of every particle white, because I think that looks the best. So now we have our particles. Now the transition is pretty much done, so we can go ahead and enable motion blur on all of the shape layers as well as the particle layer. And I've also gone and applied deep glow to the particle layer off camera, so these are the settings if you want to copy them. And after that, we can just go ahead and pre-compose everything into one layer. And now is the time to add your position shakes, your twitches, or any other effects that you might think look good. So just in case anyone's curious, here's what the final project looks like. In this composition, I have the transition itself with all of the shape layers. On this null, I have a position shake, and here I have an overlay, which I think makes the transition look quite a lot better. These are my black bars, and I've also added some pulse bars using shape layers.